guys, welcome to another episode of Becoming a Professional. I'm your host, Rilley Ramos, and we are here in Atlanta, Georgia. So we actually just wrapped up the mid-year meeting and getting some episodes going. So before we introduce our special guest today, let's go through our usual housekeeping. So this episode is brought to you by the National Chapter of Beta Alpha Psi. Enormous appreciation for their support. They're always backing us up with whatever crazy ideas we have. So huge shout out to Beta Alpha Psi. Now, make sure to sign up for the Alumni Member Network if you haven't already, so we can easily connect and have y'all experience all the benefits that the network has to offer. Now, disclaimer, the opinions in this podcast are our own and may not reflect the position of Beta Alpha Psi or our respective employers as a whole. All right, so that's housekeeping. Check that off. So I've been looking forward to today's guest, as he has also been very active with BAP for who knows how long. It's been a while.
Over 30 years.
30 years. So he's super active in the BAP scene. Now he is the president of the PhD project. Please welcome our special guest, Blane Ruschak.
Thanks, Rilley. Great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, of course. Now, first off, before we even get to any of the questions or anything like that, what'd you think of this mid-year meeting?
This Atlanta mid-year meeting, I felt super energy, great turnout, over 300 people, which is just great for a mid-year meeting. I felt that there was student engagement. The sessions were full. The applause, the passion. I think all the speakers were here, committed, and I just felt a great energy. I'm so looking forward to the annual meeting. Actually, I'll be in San Diego next week as well, but the annual meeting in Orlando, I think, is just going to be this explosive, hopefully 1,000+ individuals doing community service, coming to presentations, just putting their best foot forward. So I'm very excited about the future of BAP.
I love that. Yeah, no, I'm super looking forward to the annual meeting, and we're already finished up with our first of 5 mid-year meetings. The rest are in San Diego, Dallas, Indianapolis, and also in Auckland, New Zealand. So even though everybody in the BAP scene knows you, for those who don't, for our listeners, can you please tell us a little bit about yourself? Where'd you go to school? What made you decide on your major?
Sure, I'll give you the long version, and then you could you could choose. So I started out school at Syracuse University. I thought I was going to be an accounting major, so that was kind of my goal. And I will be one of those people who said I chose accounting because I like numbers. So when you hear the mythology about, accounting is not about numbers, for me, numbers was a big reason why I chose accounting. So I went to school, and I did not know at the time that the school had chosen an alternative way to teach accounting. It was conceptual, so you didn't learn debits and credits, you learned concepts, but I didn't know that at the time. Well, I wound up transferring to a school closer to home that I could commute from, which was a more traditional program, and so I got into my second accounting class, and when they asked, well, what would you debit and credit, I'm like, what does that mean? Mm-hmm. And so I literally was behind and thought maybe accounting was not the right path. So I took enough accounting classes. I want to be an econ major, but I took enough accounting classes to theoretically qualify for the CPA exam, but that was not on my radar screen. It was like, okay, I'm going to go into business. I interviewed for a bunch of jobs, and it happened to be during a period, and I won't say the year, where jobs were not plentiful. The kind of jobs I was being offered would be like going into a bank as an assistant. I said, this is not what I want to do. So what do you do when you don't know what you want to do? You stay in school. So I applied to a bunch of MBA programs, all in California. Okay. That was my dream, get out of New Jersey and go to California.
Cross country.
Go and have the sun and the fun. So I applied to UCLA, which is my dream school, but they really don't take people without experience, so I knew that going in. I applied to UC Riverside, another University of California system, and I got accepted there, and I wound up accepting. And I had also applied to the University of Hawaii, only because my sister had just come back from Hawaii and said, oh, it's a beautiful campus, you should apply there. I had never been, so I applied there and got accepted, but thought that was kind of a silly thing. Mm-hmm. 2 weeks before I'm leaving for California, I got a call from the department chair at the University of Hawaii saying, we received your application for applying for a teaching assistantship. We'd like to give you that. It's free tuition for your MBA, and we'll pay you a stipend each month. And I hung up the phone, and I was sitting at the dinner table, so I remember telling my family, I just got an offer to go to University of Hawaii and have them pay for my MBA. And my parents laughed and said, oh,
That's
but you're not
wild.
really going to go. And I'm like, I think I am. And they said, you've never even been. I said, but who would not want to go to Hawaii for 2 years?
Right.
So I went there, wound up being a teaching assistant in accounting, and decided I really like this accounting thing. So I switched from the MBA to the Master's of Accounting, got my Master's in Accounting degree, and happened to also be the year that the Hawaii passed the 150-hour regulation. So I happened to have the 150 the year they passed the law, and so I was in demand. So all the firms were like, oh, we have somebody who has the 150, let's hire them. So I was really lucky and privileged that I got a job with KPMG, and kind of the rest is history. If I share my Beta Alpha Psi involvement, I will share that as a graduate student back then, Beta Alpha Psi was not really the typical path.
Okay.
So University of Hawaii had both an accounting club and a Beta Alpha Psi, and I chose accounting club because Beta Alpha Psi really was not geared for graduate students. It really was an undergraduate program. So I really wasn't involved with Beta Alpha Psi until 7 years later when I took over recruiting in the Honolulu office. I was told by the recruiter at the time, the one thing you need to know is you have to get to know Beta Alpha Psi. You need to be there at all their meetings. I'm like, okay, I knew what it was, but I didn't know everything about it. And so I started going there as a recruiter, and then the light bulb went on. I met the students, the fact that they were, every week we're having meetings, they were doing professional events. They did a research kind of project where they would have to research a technical topic and then present it to a bunch of professionals in an amphitheater. And I thought, what courage to have, here are these people who are juniors and seniors, maybe a grad student, presenting to the top firms in the town. And that just kind of convinced me that Beta Alpha Psi was a stellar organization. And from that point on, that was 1989, from that point on, Beta Alpha Psi was always on my radar screen as the go-to organization that I told all the people at KPMG, no matter which office, you have to get to know Beta Alpha Psi. And I think it's just been a great organization, consistent for all those years. I'll share that also I got involved at the national level when the head of recruiting tapped me on the shoulder and said, Blane, you just became a full-time recruiter. So this was in like 2001 when I changed career paths from audit and consulting into recruiting full-time. And he said, I'd like you to take over the professional partner role at Beta Alpha Psi because he was becoming president that year. That was Bernie Milano.
Okay.
And so I, took him up on it, went to my first meeting, and I still remember vividly showing up and sat down with a bunch of people from firms, and the first thing they saw was my KPMG cap and said, you can't wear that around here. We're not allowed to promote our firms. There were very strict rules about at conferences not doing any recruiting.
Really?
And so I was like, okay, but that was my first indoctrination into Beta Alpha Psi at the national level. And then I took over as professional partner, eventually became chair of the advisory group, professional partner group, and then moved on to the board for a couple of years. Then I rotated off, and then eventually was nominated and elected to be president. So I did the president role for the 3-year term of incoming president, past president. And then I've just stayed involved. Even once I rotated out of recruiting at KPMG and took over my role as the president of the PhD project, I said we have to join as a nonprofit. And so we now are a member of Beta Alpha Psi as a nonprofit, and I'm now counting 25 years at the national level with Beta Alpha Psi.
So even throughout your journey, through your career, no matter where you were still involved with Beta Alpha Psi.
I never ever stop being involved. And I tell schools this, and it's going to be open mic on this one. So if I'm invited to go to a meeting and present and I can fit in my schedule, I will be there. I have been to schools all across the country. There are some schools that I pretty much make a tradition. I go every year. I try to fit in whatever I can fit in that day to get more students, especially students at schools that are a little more remote or don't have access to all the big four firms. My goal is to get access to those individuals. And so get someone placed in New York or get someone placed in Dallas, whatever I can do to get that Beta Alpha Psi student. Because I know that if it's a Beta Alpha Psi student, that they are going to work hard and they're going to give it their all and they're going to be impressive and hopefully have a great career path in public accounting.
Now, what was it like serving as president of BAP?
So I'll use the word interesting. You come from the professional practice side where you have a lot of money and you have a lot of resources and things get done pretty quickly. And then Beta Alpha Psi, it's a combination of people from profession, from associations, academics.
Yep.
And so I had to learn to slow things down a little bit. I had to learn to be a little more patient in terms of what was going on. And at the time, the executive director of Beta Alpha Psi, who'd been there for years, was retiring. And so part of the role that I had was to help determine who the next executive director would be. And we all know Margie. If you know Margie, you know that she was absolutely the right person for the job. So even though she may not have had the accounting background, she had passion for the organization. She was willing to learn the kind of stuff, and I think she's done an amazing job. So my year was spent trying to deal with the leadership change, just to try to deal with some of the challenges that Beta Alpha Psi was seeing in terms of value, some member value. So we did a big survey then. We hired an organization to do a survey to determine what do the members really want, because we were already seeing the tide turn where it was no longer about getting a job. If you're in Beta Alpha Psi and you're a top student, you're going to get a job. You didn't need Beta Alpha Psi to get the job. So what was the real value to keep a student coming back, especially when all the firms were hiring interns in their junior year, and then there was not a reason to come back if you were a senior or a graduate student. So we did that big survey, and that's what came out of that was the need to have events that were not just about recruiting. And so it's been 12 years now that Beta Alpha Psi has really pushed having technical topics. I'm proud to say that here at the Atlanta meeting, on one of the best practice innovation, a group talked about how they brought in 3 alumni speakers that all came from tech backgrounds. One, was with Microsoft. One was with like a local construction company, and talked about the technology tools they use in their jobs that help them be successful, and how Beta Alpha Psi helped them. And it said that's the mission, the goal. That's what we tried, after the member value survey, 12 years ago, which was how do we continue adding value from members beyond just, how do you recruit, how do you present yourself? So I'm excited to see that that's the direction Beta Alpha Psi is moving at the mid-year meetings and the annual meeting.
Right, and it's a good thing that you mentioned the best practices competition, because it's essentially them trying to show off to their peers of like, hey, this is what's working for us, and now we've also packaged it into a way that you can recreate this at your respective chapters. So hopefully by seeing that at these competitions, we can see other chapters hopefully replicate what technology how technology has made its way into our everyday careers.
Right.
So
and the alumni, like, we want to showcase. Beta Alpha Psi has such a rich history of amazing alumni who have gone on and become leaders in organizations, and what a better group of people. So I think it helpfully encourages chapters to not fall into the trap of just reaching back to the same recruiter in a local firm, et cetera, but instead reaching to their alumni, who I think are very willing and wanting to give back, but just have to be asked.
Yeah,
to
trust me, any opportunity that we get to come back on campus, you best believe we'll be there. I have not yet to miss any sort of event at my alma mater, and that's mainly because I have such a strong connection with my faculty advisors, so we're always in the loop. But for the alumni who don't have that relationship but still want to be active, they're out there. Like, it's just a matter of trying to maintain those connections and being able to really leverage those relationships.
Right. I'm glad you mentioned the faculty advisors, because they deserve like 5 gold stars. They are the glue, while the students come and go and they graduate. That faculty advisor is there for a long period of time, and they have those connections. And so I encourage all the students to utilize their faculty advisors to get the names of those alumni, to be able to reach out, because I think the faculty advisors are truly an amazing group and deserve a lot of kudos and pats on the back that they don't always get. But I've seen it in action where they come to these meetings and it's all about the students. It's about student success. It's about leaving with more information than when they came. So I just think the faculty advisor group should be acknowledged more than they are.
For sure. Now, you were are a professional partner. Can you speak to more about that, and what is it like to serve as a professional partner?
Sure. So when I started, it was called the advisory group. So now they changed it to professional partner. And I remember when they changed it, I was like, well, when you abbreviate, it's like PP, but that's probably not going to. So we kind of had
FAs
to
and the
start
PPs.
spelling it out, like but it's basically a group that gets together because they all believe in the organization, and they help provide guidance to the board to provide just some input in terms of what corporate America, what the the accounting firms, what the finance firms, what they're looking for in candidates. What would be the expectation? Why would they want to be part of Beta Alpha Psi? And it's I think that input that helps drive how Beta Alpha Psi has to morph over time. Right? It's not the same organization it was 100 years ago. Plus, when it started, it's a very different organization. Like I said, it's not all about jobs. It's about creating professionals who are going to be successful in whatever kind of occupation they go into. So I think professional partners love the fact that they have the ability to get together, number one, amongst themselves, because it's a great opportunity to network with our own peers, whether it's our profession or finding out what's going on in banking or IS and hearing the dynamics and be able to collaborate. So, say, well, here's the needs now of the tomorrow's professional. How can Beta Alpha Psi help us drive those kind of skill sets? And I'll say, one thing that I love about Beta Alpha Psi is the students are quick to adapt. And in today's environment where this technology is exploding, right? I mean, you heard the word AI a little bit a year or two ago, and now
It's everywhere.
Everywhere. And I think Beta Alpha Psi is already on top of that. I think they're already getting presentations on, AI and how it's being incorporated into all the industries. And so that's what I love about Beta Alpha Psi. They're able to, at the local chapter level, since it's locally driven, be able to adapt quickly to what the needs are in that particular market.
Right. Well, because it's really funny that you mentioned as far as like the value proposition, and as soon as students have a job offer, they drop off. Well, thing is, it's playing the long game, because you have the first job offer, but really what you're going to get out of BAP is that network that will, when it comes further down in your career, if you ever have to make moves to that second, the third, the fourth position in your career. Because at least for me, like, I thought I was going to be a lifer in public, and that wasn't the case. I did about 4 or 5 years in public accounting before I made the switch, and it was my network that helped me make that transition a lot smoother than what I would assume most people would go through had they not have such a strong network through Beta Alpha Psi.
Right. Yeah, I agree that the network part, and what's interesting is it doesn't even have to be at the school you went to, because not everybody stays local. So I think if you stay local, that your network is the people that you graduate with and you keep going back to campus. But I think even when you move to a different city, if you get involved in recruiting, you'll be asked to go to a Beta Alpha Psi event at that school that they recruit at in that city. And I think it's that same ability to network now in a new city, but with people who are other alumni coming back to events. So I couldn't agree more that alumni base and networking is critical. I wish more people took advantage of it, because I think Beta Alpha Psi has taken great strides in trying to create the technology tools and the processes to help people stay engaged. But it's hard. There's so many different types of networks out there. It's like you have to join LinkedIn, you have to join this group, you have to join this association. So it's one more group, but I think the Beta Alpha Psi has that consistent base of people who really want to see each other succeed. So I'm glad you took advantage of that.
Of course. Yeah. Now, why should other firms become a professional partner? So not from the student perspective, but from the firm side.
Yeah. So if you go back to the fact that Beta Alpha Psi to me equals quality, right? So if you're a firm and you want to see the best students, and I said students don't need Beta Alpha Psi to get a job, but I think the recruiters need Beta Alpha Psi to find the best students. So I think there is a little bit of a reverse connection. And so I think as firms, no matter what size you are, no matter what industry you are, if you want to meet a student who has proven themselves academically, has proven themselves in terms of engagement, believes in community service, that's a pillar of Beta Alpha Psi, then you come to one place, Beta Alpha Psi, and you find all that. And I think it's almost like a secret sauce that people, and they don't want others to know about it, because once they find it, it's like, well, they don't want to tell any of their competitors, but we all know that
right.
it's, and I belong to a number of other organizations I'm involved with. Some are just pure recognition organizations. Beta Alpha Psi is very different.
It's very
because
hands-on.
it requires so much. we know that if you're a member and you're active, that you are going to be a well-polished, you're going to be a well-rounded professional. And what I see BA Alpha Psi is, it's almost like running, being a member of a company, right? You have meetings. Well, something goes wrong. Guess what? It's a student who figured out, okay, my speaker just canceled. What do I do? The caterer didn't deliver food. What do I do? The flu's going around, and half the students backed out of the program, out of an event. What do I? So the students have to learn how to deal with day-to-day issues while they're students. And so when they come to the profession, it doesn't surprise them that they have to learn to adapt and be able to, do change management. So that's what I love about the Beta Alpha Psi students. They're learning in school how to manage themselves as a professional. So when they enter any profession, they're equipped, they're ready.
Now, as your time as a recruiter, what has the hiring experience been like when interacting with Beta Alpha Psi members?
I'm sorry, repeat that question again.
So back during your recruiting days, what was that hiring experience like when you were interacting with Beta Alpha Psi members?
Well, I think when you go to a Beta Alpha Psi meeting, you automatically assume everybody's hireable. So you go in there, and then you realize that some students don't want public accounting, so that's fine. So you kind of go through that. You realize that some students, may stand out a little bit because they were an officer, and so they had a chance to build leadership experience. So, but you go in there thinking that everybody wants to come to your firm, and so that's how you approach it. And I feel comfortable knowing that even someone who might be an introvert and quiet, they have other skills, talents, technical-wise, or whether it's like they're great to technology, but they don't really want to go out there and deal with people. That's fine, because there's a role for everybody. And I just feel comfortable that Beta Alpha Psi takes care of that baseline skills that we would want as a firm. Once again, it's a huge organization, right? 6,000-7,000 members. I'm throwing numbers out there. I'm guessing that's around the right number. So it's a lot of students, and I encourage any firm that has exposure to do it, especially now that they have virtual meetings too. So it's not like you have to drive three hours through the cornfields to get to a school.
Right.
Those days are gone, right? There's a lot of virtual things. You can see how students are acting on Zoom, or you can even community service events are done, digitally now. So I just think that my experience with students, I go in there, of course, and like every firm, try to pick the officers off first. Okay, let's go after the officers. Right. And then we just keep going and like, okay, what's your role? What's your role? And it's amazing now that they even allow sophomores to get engaged.
Yeah, they're starting to go younger.
We're like, okay, I realize you've only taken 2 courses in accounting, but I can tell you're going to be a superstar. So for me, it's a very cost-effective way to go because of my experience with Beta Alpha Psi. I will say that I've never been to any school's meeting chapter where I felt like, wow, this is not the level that I'm used to. No matter where they were, how big or small they were, I felt like I was getting that same kind of quality. And so I said I encourage anybody, look, if Beta Alpha Psi invites you, go and bring as many people as you can as will allow you to bring.
Now, and it's interesting too when you were mentioning how like there's essentially a place for everybody, regardless of your employee type, whether that's introvert, extrovert. Well, can you talk about how Beta Alpha Psi alumni have brought positive attributes to their job roles?
I think because they already come to the table having these skills, they're the ones that when they start are the ones volunteering for, if there's an opportunity to work on a tough engagement, if there's an opportunity to learn a new tool. I think the Beta Alpha Psi students are the ones that are saying, holding their hand up and saying, pick me. Let me try that. I love to travel. They're open to trying new things. I think there's a thirst for learning that's part of Beta Alpha Psi, and that thirst is something that all firms, but I'll speak for KPMG, needs that thirst for knowledge because there's so many new things happening, new tools coming out that you need to want to learn it. And I think the Beta Alpha Psi students, because that's how they came up through school. It's not like, oh, what's the minimum class I need to take? It's what more can I take? What new skills can I learn? I mean, how many certificates Beta Alpha Psi students now have in their digital badges and stuff?
Yeah.
So it's what we want as an employer because then they bring that thirst for knowledge with them, and we all need that.
Yeah, and it's funny too with all the changes that have been. I feel like every other year, every year for the most part, there's always something big this is the new big thing. This is the next new big thing. and it's an opportunity that levels the playing field for anyone who's just straight out of college that, hey, I can pick up this new skill and be on the same level in terms of that whatever tool it is with a partner at a firm who's also trying to get a feel for these new like any new technology that's coming out. So any innovation is essentially an opportunity to level the playing field.
Agreed. And also, I secretly to myself, whenever I see someone get promoted or leave for an amazing job, I go back in my little brain cells and go, didn't I hire them? And weren't they Beta Alpha Psi? And there are a few presidents that come to mind where I just watched their career just explode, and just very proud of them, one that I hired them, but also that that I saw that opportunity, that skill set that they had from Beta Alpha Psi, even though they might have been at a small school or a small chapter and didn't have a chance to necessarily prove themselves. I just knew that the skills that they learned Beta Alpha Psi were going to make them successful. So I do kind of keep a little checklist of, oh, look at that one, another Beta Alpha Psi,
You love to see it, like especially when it's the newer candidates or the people who are like still just younger in their career. Like I know at least whenever I go to new candidate socials and I'm meeting all these students and telling them why they should join Beta Alpha Psi, like what has it done for me, and then now I'm seeing them at the conferences, I see them presenting best practices, I see them taking on leadership roles, and now they're doing well in their respective careers as they're finishing college. Because I mean, I've been part of Beta Alpha Psi since 2015, and it's just been one of those things where, like, came full circle. Danielle Brannick, she was our keynote speaker. She was the reason why I joined Beta Alpha Psi when I saw her do the alumni panel. And now to see her do a keynote and me be in her position back as she was back then, it's all just seeing this progression and how everyone is just coming up in their career.
Yeah, it's a life cycle, and you become like the proud parent at some point. So at one point you're the kid kind of going up and having somebody proud of you, and then all of a sudden years later you're the proud parent because you mentored people, and and that's what I love about Beta Alpha Psi. There's such a desire to keep giving back for those that stay engaged and involved. It's the giving back and the paying it forward that I just see every day.
Yeah. Now, I mean, to wrap things up, can you tell us what your favorite Beta Alpha Psi memory is?
Absolutely, and this sticks with me, to this day. So when I was president, going back to, over a decade ago, we all know that at the annual event, you have a community service day, and KPMG sponsors that community service day. So Denver was the city where we were going to have the meeting, and normally you do the big park cleanup or some event where you can send everybody out into the community. Well, that year, there was a problem. We couldn't get like any organizations that would be willing to take 1,000 students.
Okay.
And so we were kind of at a standstill. And my assistant, who worked in Denver, said, well, there's this great event every year called Project Homeless Connect. And I said, tell me more about it. And she said, well, twice a year they open up the convention center, and all these service providers come, and it's open for anybody from the homeless community to come and get a haircut, meet to try to have their license reinstated because it was revoked, whatever. All these services, meet about housing, how to find homes so they don't have to be on the street, et cetera. And I said, this sounds pretty amazing. Let me run it by the board. And I ran it by the board, and there was concern. There was like, our students, aren't used to being with homeless people, and everybody had this vision, including me, that homeless people meant like somebody that's sitting on the street with a bottle of alcohol and begging for money.
Yeah, like worst case scenario kind of thing.
Yeah, it's like we all have that stereotype, but I wasn't willing to give up on this, and so we made sure all the precautions were in place, that we felt comfortable. And the day of the event, I remember all these students, and we had it set up where 2 students would line up, and they would then be connected with a homeless person who came to the event, and they would go down an escalator and then have this big like ballroom convention center where they would then escort them around. They had a little checklist. Would you like a haircut today? And what happened was the people who showed up, that the homeless community, were a father with his 2 daughters that were living in a van because he had lost his job. It was the person who had been on the streets for like 10 years and really didn't want to come off the streets. He felt very comfortable there, but needed some health services. And so I think everybody's vision changed. And then you could see the students just reimagining what it meant. Like this was not what they had seen as homeless. And as they would come up the escalator to leave, we would ask the person to do a little survey, like, how was your day? And I, remember this one individual turned his form in. At the bottom he wrote, at least for one day I felt like a special person.
Oh.
Yep. And I said, I still get emotional talking about it because it was,
oh my gosh,
it
that
was
is so
just
cool.
like, and I think the student, we all learned that day that, there are people who need help, and it's not always about, some of the easy ones, the food banks, those are great, but this was one that impacted people in terms of caring and their life, and just simple things like, hey, I can't afford to get my daughter's, a haircut, but today I got it for free, and they feel good about themselves. And so that's my kind of favorite. And I'll just a sequel to that story is the following year we went to Baltimore, and word got out, and so we talked to the city of Baltimore, and they decided they wanted to try it. They had never done anything like that, and we did it at Raven Stadium. And it was in the summer, and it was like 105 degrees and humidity. People lined up around the stadium to come in there. And that event was so successful that eventually became the largest Project Homeless Connect in the country.
Oh my gosh, no way. So was this, what year
That
was
probably would have been
Baltimore?
2013.
Was it 2013? Okay, because I remember they had Baltimore. Now, they obviously will go back to these different cities. I think it was 2016. I got to go to a Baltimore meeting for the annuals, but I was in Project Front with it, so I wasn't able to do
so
that.
you wouldn't have gone to the event. But
that would be really cool, though, for them to bring that back.
Well, and just show Beta Alpha Psi can change a community, right? That was the 1 year in and out, but it changed a community. It created an event that now lasts, and I just have memories of it that just tells me we need to open ourselves up. We need to sometimes get out of our stereotypes and understand with community service there's so many different types of needs, and that whatever we can do to help a community is worth it. So I love Project Run with it because I think it helps that local firm, local organization that couldn't afford to get an analysis done by students that have passion and energy and great ideas, amazing ideas, so, some of which are not implementable, but it's always great to hear their kind of ideas and then see how we can scale it back to implement it. So
something more realistic. Yeah. Now, if anything, service has been one of the major pillars when it came to my time in BAP as a student, even still as an alumni advocate. It's always something that's like, how can we always give back? That's essentially what the alumni advocate for what my role is how can I be that support, that resource for the students and the chapters for their programming or their alumni outreach. It's always been there where it's I treat the students as if like they're like my children. You want them to be a better version of yourself, kind of thing. So I totally get it. And so,
well, it's clear that you continue to give back, and even doing things like this, which is a new and innovative way to share messaging with people who have a lot of exposure to Beta Alpha Psi. So thank you for doing this, because I think it's going to be a really value add for not just current students, but those that come in a year from now and 2 years from now. So as a professional partner and former kind of board member and former president, I want to thank you for doing this.
of course, I appreciate that. Thank you so much. Now, unfortunately, that's all the time that we have for this episode, but we're going to have you back on, like, as a returning guest. I feel like you have a wealth of knowledge and just endless stories that you can keep going on.
Yeah, there are stories, some of which probably won't be ready, available for primetime broadcasting, but I'm happy to share. I have so many memories, and a lot of people that you're interviewing on this have memories along with me, so it might be scary to get two of us on at the same time.
Oh my gosh, that would be crazy. That would be crazy. Definitely an idea for next time. But with that being said, thank you again to everybody for tuning in to this week's episode. Be sure to like, subscribe, and follow us from whatever platform you're tuning in from. Also, check out the show notes for our various social media pages and official Beta Alpha Psi swag. Blane, thank you again for guesting on our podcast. It was such a pleasure to hear your journey. And we're definitely going to have you again. Definitely going to have you back on the podcast for another episode. But with that, we'll see you on the next episode of Becoming a Professional.
Take care, BAP.
Hey everyone, Riley here with the credits. This episode, titled The Secret Sauce for BAP Success, was hosted by myself, Riley Ramos, and accompanied by our special guest, Blane Ruschak. Music was sourced from Resolute Audio and Fine Tune Music on Adobe Stock. Huge shout out to Beta Alpha Psi for their financial support and keeping the podcast going strong. If you haven't already, please join the Alumni and Member Network. Details can be found in the show notes. Thanks again for tuning in, and we'll see you on the next episode of Becoming a Professional.